here's a quick overview. ITSM Academy is a full-service provider of IT service management education. We develop all of our content in-house, and that includes all ITIL education as well as process design, agile, and DevOps. Since 2003, we've trained and certified tens of thousands of students. Now let me introduce today's speaker, Matt Hooper. Matt is a digital transformentalist, an author, podcaster, blogger, and a Twitter addict. He is an engaging international speaker on agile business management, leadership, technology, and customer service. His 20-plus year career has taken him from help desk analyst to CIO. Matt brings practical and real-world insights for growing and sustaining business outcomes through organizational agility and customer centricity. He is an active member of the ITSM, DevOps, and Agile communities. And you can follow him on Twitter if you'd like. His Twitter handle is @VigilantGuy. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Karen. How are you?
I'm fine. Are you ready for me to make you the presenter?
I am.
All right, here we go. We're looking forward to this presentation.
I'm excited to give it. Well, thank everybody for attending today. The presentation material that I prepared for this webinar with ITSM Academy is really to help bridge the gap between the digital push for businesses to transform into organizations that could leverage technology for more substantial business outcomes, and how that kind of relates back to our world inside of ITSM and the work and daily activities that we do. So I'm going to walk you through just a couple of bits and pieces of information to kind of set the stage for where we are today. And if we look at where we are, we all know that we're facing a series of disruptions. We see disruptions both in the methodologies that we're supposed to use. We see disruption in the technologies that we're supposed to implement. We see disruption in the way that our end users are using the technology and interacting with it. And these come at different levels that affect us both in our tactical and operational activities as well as our strategic activities. So for example, when we look at the millennial generation that's coming into the workforce, they predominantly want to have and bring their own devices so that they can use their own applications that make them most productive. And these applications usually consist of cloud services or cloud sharing technologies that are more collaborative, more real-time, more highly available, easily accessible. And we are challenged sometimes as IT to try to understand, well, what is that asset and how do we put that on our network and how do we secure it and how do we make sure that corporate data doesn't go out and how do we have to maintain our regulatory and compliance that we have to deal with. So we're faced with these both situations where we have to provide some control and governance and manage the operation and maintain the business integrity, especially to the digital assets. But we also have to kind of set them free. So we're being told to release things faster, make changes faster, enable end users faster, provide better experiences to our end customers, and create more integration with our business partners and channels. So all of this disruption, it brings things like managed hybrid cloud terms. Don't even ask me what that is, I don't know. But it becomes one of these complex things that we have to kind of figure out, right? It's really where will our digital assets and infrastructure sit and how we will manage them and what will they be like and how are they deployed. So if we take a step back and say, well, how do we get to this situation, right? It's really, we've seen this progressive nature of accessibility. So the digital transformation that we are experiencing today, in a lot of ways, is no different than the digital transformation we saw 10 years ago, no different than the digital transformation we saw 20 years ago, and really no different than the digital transformation we saw 30 years ago. See, every digital transformation, every progressive aspect of technology evolution has been to provide more ubiquitousness, or in other words, make the technology more accessible in more real time. So there were physical limitations with mainframes. While there was better and easier controls, it was harder to get access to it. And you used to have to schedule the time in which you would operate on the mainframe. So we pushed computing out to the desktop. This made it easier to get computing and to do processing and to do calculations and to let distribution of intelligence out into the network. And then we would connect those networks globally so we could share information more real time. But that got expensive, and then we were able to leverage the internet as a way to get access to these systems. And people said, well, why do we put these inside the corporate firewalls? Let's just push these out to the end users with mobile apps. And if they're coming back from their mobile apps into the private networks, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why can't we just put this into cloud solutions where data can pass between our corporate network and the internet in a secure fashion, make it accessible. And now we've seen new things such as containers and microservices, which are saying, well, if I have cloud service availability, how do I make changes to these so they're not so disruptive? If I have one release of code, it's not going to take down all of my end user or end customer activity. So how do I separate risk and improve elasticity within my environment so I can scale storage, computing, memory, application services at greater speed? So in reality, it's really just been a progressive nature of trying to think about how do we improve the capabilities and remove the limitations. So what does this mean to us in ITSM? See, in ITSM, we sometimes haven't had real focus on the digital strategy. A lot of our processes and a lot of our methodologies have been geared more around controls. We've had and seen this disruption cause business impacts. And so we spent a lot of time trying to think about, well, how do we create a culture that allows us to stop bad things from happening? And what we've seen, and the reality of this is that through that methodology and through some of these processes and through the isolation of technology where you have your project management in your project management database and your requirements in your requirements management database and your knowledge and its knowledge management database, is that all of this intelligence has kept us from seeing the bigger picture and understanding the relationship that we have inside of operating IT to the digital strategy that business is focused on. And so when we look at that, we have to really reimagine what our business could be doing if it didn't have so many barriers to deploying technology and managing technology and scaling technology. And what we could really do for the business if we could control data in a more secure way, but make it more accessible and contextual real time. So how do we change and invent the new, as this quote says? Well, if we look at how our workforce works today, they're kind of forcing us into this. You know, even when we look at simple things like asset and configuration management, core staples within inside of ITSM, what does that mean? Who owns the asset? Where does it reside? And how do we track that? And what is its current configuration? And who's responsible for it? In a presentation I did about 4 years ago, I jokingly showed my 14-year-old daughter versus your IT department. And I said, well, she could deploy about 30 mobile applications in 2 minutes. How long does it take for your IT department to deploy mobile applications, right? And she could get 70 million years of video-based knowledge management in real time. How long does it take for you to author, edit, and approve a knowledge article? And it's these kind of comparisons that show that the speed in which people want to access technology and access information really is becoming, it's more mobile, it's multiple devices, it's multiple experiences that they're creating. But at the end of the day, what it really is, it's a simple process of removing the barrier. It's a simple process of increasing the flow of work. And this is what technology has always been about. The car over the horse is simply the ability to remove the physical barriers. The need and caring of a physical horse became less than the need and caring of a physical car and the speed in which you could execute. So those technology barriers are removed. The needing to carry around food for a horse was replaced by the ability to have petrol, which was a lot easier to carry and could go a lot further. Right? And this has transcended all the way through generations. And what we know is that as we look through how we utilize technology, physical limitations don't allow us to scale. And so as we get to internet, get to email, get to all these kind of digital interactions, well, you know, mailing something in the old day was not as scalable as mailing on email, right? The communication is much easier, and it can be done in real time, and it enables thousands of decisions a second in real time. So as we look at these barriers, what does this mean to businesses? And that's why we have to kind of think about how do we unlock the wave of growth. And as we will take a look at in a second, there are a couple of businesses that have been kind of called unicorns, or these other types of names have been thrown against these companies. But in reality, what they've done is they've focused on removing the physical limitations. And anytime that they could make something physical and make it digital, it allowed scalability, it allowed increased performance, or it freed up precious resources. And that's why businesses have really started to say, okay, we have to stop thinking about the IT assets that we have as a necessary evil. And we have to really start to look at how can we leverage these. And if we take a look at some of these business models, we can see this. And a classic one you'll hear about, I'm sure you've read about, is Netflix and Blockbuster. But I'd like to tell you the story of just kind of where these companies were and where they got to. See, Blockbuster was started in 1985, and it actually had a business model that was removing the physical. Before, you would have to go to these video stores. It was really hard to see the selection. It was really hard to understand what videos you'd have to get. They really weren't up to date. Blockbuster, what they did is they cataloged videos, and they created an efficiency within their supply chain to bring you the latest and greatest videos first. And when you walked into a store, they were typically set up the same way. So it was really breaking down that barrier of finding the video you wanted. And even themselves, video stores, removing the physical of you having to take your whole family to a movie theater, right? So you can see the series of progressions of breaking down the physical. Now, they had a great business model. They started to set up locations that were really close to your home, which was great because you didn't have to drive so far. Again, removing the physical. And in 1994, Viacom purchased Blockbuster for $8.4 billion. Now, in 1997, Netflix was started. Netflix immediately came after a physical limitation that Blockbuster wasn't. Netflix used to ship DVDs. You probably forget that, but they did. They used to ship DVDs to your house. Why? So that you physically didn't have to get out of your house and go get the movie. Again, it was that they were going after that physical barrier. Now, in 2000, Blockbuster passed on buying Netflix for $50 million. In 2004, Blockbuster had 60,000 employees, 9,000 stores. Netflix stock, on the other hand, it really wasn't worth that much. It was just kind of getting off the ground. And so I think it was worth about $5. In 2007, though, Blockbuster started to realize that some of its business was eroding to this easier to access video content from Netflix. The CEO went to the board and said, in 2007 at Blockbuster, I want to have a digital strategy. I want to not invest in our physical stores, and I want to have an online presence. And for a brief time, they did. But the chairman of the board fired the CEO, and they brought in the 7-Eleven CEO. Now, 7-Eleven CEO had a brick-and-mortar, location-based strategy and experience. And he doubled down on the physical expansion of Blockbuster. What happened? In 2013, Blockbuster went out of business owing $900 million in debt. Today, Netflix stock is worth $120. It's making its market cap $46 billion. So Netflix, when it went to the digital pushing of movies over the internet, it took a real risk because the internet at that time wasn't as ubiquitous as it now, but it saw the progressive nature of where the internet and accessibility was going. Right? They realized that delivering internet movies over the internet was going to eliminate that physical having to ship back and forth, making it real time. And you see that they haven't stopped. They continue to remove the physical. How do I find the movies? How do I pick back up from where I was on my last movie? How do I switch from my TV to my mobile device and start at the same spot I stopped? Those are all physical limitations that Netflix has focused on and doubled down on, which has allowed them to stay as the market leader. And even though they have Amazon Prime and Google Play and iTunes viciously trying to disrupt them, they're increasing their algorithms and trying to increase the level of business that they're providing. Same goes for Uber and taxis. Right? It wasn't so much that Uber had mobile payments. It wasn't that they had geolocations that they were disruptive in the market with. It wasn't that they were doing real-time secure communications between supplier and provider and requester. All of that just came together in a business model that allowed them to focus on a new experience. And it was a digital strategy. Because when you look at it, Uber is the largest fleet service in the world that doesn't own a single car. And one of the things, if you translate this back into the IT mentality, is when you say, hey, the business owns the risk. Us ITSM people say that all the time. What should we do to set our priorities? Ask the business. We say that all the time. Go to Uber and ask them, who's IT and who's the business? Uber's the largest fleet service in the world that doesn't own a car. Then what are they? They're a digital company. They are IT. IT is the business. And that's what they were doing. They were focused on removing those physical barriers. Where am I? Where's the closest cars to me? How many are so far away? How do they find me? How do we connect? How do I pay? It's removing this. I don't have to pull out my cash. I don't have to worry about it. It knows when I got into the car. For me personally, my Uber, I comes into my email. I have if this and that, and it automatically goes into my expense report. I never even touch a receipt with Uber ever, and I get my reimbursements. It's great, right? It's removing those physical barriers. And that's the focal point on a lot of trends. Do you use Evernote? If you use Evernote, one of the things you might have thought is, well, Evernote was removing the paper, right? Paper was the problem with Evernote. No, paper was not the problem with Evernote. Phil Livin, who's a friend of mine, the founder of Evernote, we were in San Francisco one time, and he was writing on his piece of paper. And someone said to him, I can't believe, Phil, that you are using paper. You built Evernote. Shouldn't you be putting this in Evernote? He goes, paper's not my competition. Filing's my competition. Writing it down is really super fast. That's not a physical barrier. In fact, sometimes it's a whole lot easier than going in and have to work with a foolish keyboard or a swipe or even trying to do hand recognition on the paper. He goes, but then what I did is we focused on Evernote taking a picture and doing OCR and recognizing that and digitally filing it. And then I can meta tag it really easy, and I can find it later. That's the value, right? If that's the physical barrier that they were focused on and taking that apart. So as we look through these current trends, we're seeing this. It wasn't so much about Dropbox and Box and Google Drive giving you more disk storage cheaper. No, disk continued to get cheaper, but can I get a file on my mobile device and my laptop at the same time? You know, it's a wonderful period in time in technology. For those of us who've been in for a while, I can literally take a sledgehammer to my laptop or my iPad, and I'm good to go in about 15 minutes after I walk out of a Best Buy. That's a great experience, right? This is the world we live in. And so when you look at this, it transcends into kind of how the physical human interaction works. Landesk has become a more virtual company. I know ITSM Academy is a virtual company. We don't need people sitting in traffic anymore. These are talented knowledge workers, and we'd rather get that extra time during the day for them to collaborate and share experiences and work, and we can do it over video. You're learning right now over the internet, right? Increasing your experiences and your understanding about how the world works. I'm sure you use many of these tools, Skype or Link or WebEx, or just GoToMeeting right there on that logo. So what does this mean for us? Well, if we looked at how CEOs are focused on funding these digital disruptions, there's surveys out there that have about 25 different focus areas. But I'm going to break down just 4 of them. And if we look at these 4 areas, revenue growth, improving decision-making through analytics, achieving cost savings, and creating better customer experiences, which ones do you think are the CIO agendas? And which one do you think are the CMO agendas? Would you not agree with me that the CIO agenda is really about improving decision-making through analytics and achieving cost savings? If you disagree with me, I was just at the Gartner IT Expo conference. They just put the report out. Number 1 CIO agenda, analytics and BI. Number 2 agenda, improving data center operations, which in other words translates to achieving cost savings. Now the CMO, what are they focused on? They're focused on revenue growth and creating better customer experiences, aren't they? Right? They're out there to market the company and create better opportunities. Where is the CEO's focus for digital transformation, digital growth and strategy? 2% against analytics, 4% for achieving cost savings, 25% for creating better customer experiences, and 45% for revenue growth. So what is this telling us? It's telling us that a CEO doesn't have faith in IT or doesn't have a partner in IT where they're aligned with their focus on digital transformation. And that's what we're seeing is more and more technology spend is going to other departments. You may have heard this term, shadow IT. The only people who call shadow IT is IT people. IT people call when the business goes and spends technology money, shadow IT, as if it's some kind of derogatory or bad things. Do you know what the business calls spending money on technology? Getting stuff done. They're trying to achieve a business outcome, and they want to deliver technology to go achieve that. And while IT thinks that they're driving digital transformation, most of the time they're not. They don't see that IT really has the partnership in doing that. And over time, what happens is the way that they handle that is they just replace IT leadership. This trend from Infotech shows us that most of the time, when IT is not able to deliver the digital capabilities that are needed for a business to compete in the marketplace, the leadership is removed. So what does that mean for us? It means that we have to rethink and relearn the way that we operate IT. We have the opportunity in ITSM to be the digital transformation partner. And if I was to ask you before you started listening to this webinar, do you consider yourself a digital transformation expert? You probably would have said no. But what I want to challenge you with is look at where we are in our practices. Look at where we are in the new kind of methodologies that we're embracing, continuous release, continuous deployment. Look at the systems that we're managing change around that are software defined and rapidly being spun up. We have the opportunity to change ourselves and reinvent ourselves, improve ourselves as a digital partner. So we have to increase our capabilities. We have to improve the way in which we operate, because otherwise we're really going to be left behind. We're going to see this spend of IT funding going outside of IT more and more. And you'll either find yourself reporting to a different part of the business or with a skills gap in the marketplace. So we really have to mature, and I use that word very cautiously, but really we really need to increase our capabilities and skills and our perspective. Because if we want to be technology leaders and we want to have a presence in this new digital transformation, we have to show that we ourselves can have a digital strategy. We can show ourselves that we have the ability to provide digital outcomes. Now, at this point, most of the time I give these types of presentations, I love to ask the question, do you run analytics on your self-service portal? For your self-service request system, do you run analytics? Do you know which people click on what requests, how many times they abandon those requests, how many people come in every day to search for knowledge? Do you know how they're utilizing those technologies? What's it look like? Is it appealing? Is it mobile friendly? See, that's usually the face on which companies interact with you as an IT organization. That's how they perceive you and your vision of customer experience. And really, not that we want to call our business partners customers, but if we want to increase revenue or increase usage of our services, what's the growth and what's the adoption rates? If we're not measuring that, really in any way can we show that we're the solid person they want to have, or that we're shaped up and dressed up for success? Probably not, right? So how do we get there? How do we increase our agility? Agility just isn't speed. See, if you look at this ballerina, they're not running across the stage here, but you would still call them agile because they are actually in more control, but yet their flexibility to adapt and move in motion and in synchronicity with the rest of the dancers and with the rest of the performers and the rest of the musicians provides a real thing of beauty. And that's what we're looking for with IT. How do we acquire assets and release assets and change assets, change technology, improve operations, improve performance, improve availability, increase high availability, increase disaster recovery capabilities with better synchronicity of where the business needs to have us, right? So if we look at that, there's a bunch of breakdowns that we see. And if we compare this against kind of our traditional versus more agile ITSM, we can see that there's a big gap, right? If we look at how traditional ITSM talks, for instance, just how they talk, we have publications and we use terms such as customer. Customer means, in traditional ITSM, anybody who's not in IT. Is that forging a bond between you and your business partner? Is that establishing a partnering relationship, or does that provide insulary or isolating type language? I was in Australia a couple of weeks ago in a keynote, and I joked around. I said, imagine if I went back to my partner and said to her, listen, I had a great time in Australia, and I decided to use traditional ITSM language. I said, you know what? I was 99.9% faithful to you. Could you imagine that that's going to build a partnering agreement? Can you imagine that's going to build a relationship? Now, we're all human, and a true partner says, hey, listen, we know that we're going to do things and whatever, but overall, we've got the same shared goals, and when hard times come or someone makes a mistake, we're going to work through that together. So when you look at Agile ITSM, there's one company, and they have one customer, and they don't work here. And we're going to fail on a release of a technology isn't like, oh, IT, you stink, you don't know what you're doing. It's like, oh, what do we learn from that, and how do we improve it? Right? How do we move forward? How do we fail fast and fail forward? Because we're partnering, we're going to experience this together, because as your partner, you ask me for business requirements, I really don't know. This is a new market space. This is a new world. We haven't ventured into this world yet. We're figuring this out together. So how does that translate now from this kind of concept that there's this, mystical business requirement that sits out there that someone has clearly defined, and IT is going to establish, a service portfolio and a service design package and a service release strategy and SLAs to then operationally improve the way that it sustains itself? It's not. And so if you look traditionally, you have these groups of, they're very siloed between project management, development, and operations. Agile ITSM says, listen, IT is not a department. IT is a competency. It's capability, right? We have to work as a team. The business analyst is also an IT person, and the project manager is also an IT person. We're all IT people, and we're all creating technology to advance the business outcome. So we have to work more collaboratively, and we don't want you reporting into different people. Now, there may be shared skill sets, and functionally they can be organized and report to a manager. That's all good and fine. But if you look at kind of holacracy and other kind of self-managed initiatives, at this capability of maturity, how many different ways are you really going to run a Scrum project or a Waterfall project? Not, right? We're going to continue to learn, and we share things more collaboratively, we learn in real time. So if we can break down this barrier that there's somehow we as IT do something that the business doesn't do, we're separating ourselves, because IT is the business. And you'll see that with Agile ITSM organizations is that they don't focus on IT projects, they focus on business projects. One of my heroes in the industry is Kim Stevenson from Intel. Kim just recently became the COO of Intel, but she was previously the CIO of Intel. Not that CIOs are better than CIOs, but progressively in a career path, it really is a lot more responsibility now across the organization, right? Just to show her trust that she's won with inside the organization. I think that's really awesome. But as a CIO, one of the first things that she did, I had a chance to be in an interview with her in 2013, which is video recorded. We talked about how she was able to gain more traction, and she said she canceled all the IT projects. She made everybody who was owning that project come back and sell it to her as a business project. Go talk to the business relationship management team and sell this back to me as a business project. Let's have a business outcome and a business benefit to it. What a great strategy, right? And what that did is that changed the way that the organization looked at her and her team in IT as not being some service provider that is evaluated and calculated on a spreadsheet for financial cost and control and ability, but it really looked at them as like, wow, you guys are enabling the business, and you really truly are improving things. And one of the cool projects she had is getting devices like mice and power chargers and keyboards and things like that was a bit of an arduous process. She set up these big kiosks where you just take your employee swipe card and you go over and you swipe it. So if you're working late in the middle of the night and you're a product marketing manager, you're a marketing person or whatever, you don't have to go to the service desk, you don't have to go to a portal. Just walk up to one of these kiosks, swipe your card, and out comes what you need, and you go work. It showed that, wow, this digital enablement for me to get requests fulfilled is really cool. One of the things they also did is they focused on providing a media streaming system and providing better learning and real education and providing a streaming service that was so fantastic. They spun out a whole business unit called Intel Media, which was purchased for $4 billion by Verizon. And that's how Verizon streams media over to your mobile phones. How cool is that, right? That IT refocused itself from being a service provider to being a digital strategy enabler. And what they did and how they did that is they worked through strategies such as minimal viable product. They set out not a whole bunch of changes, but they focused on continuous release and continuous change. So when you look at how traditional ITSM tries to stop gap hemorrhaging of outages, they use a change advisory board to control all the flow of work. This slows things down to the point that the really simple things don't get reviewed in the Thursday at 3 o'clock change advisory board meeting. And then what they have to do is they have to stack all those simple changes, really easy to roll back, really easy to identify, into much more monolithic, complex changes, so it gets reviewed next week. Well, this is hard, right? This is hard for us to get the flow of work. It's hard for us to isolate. It actually causes more complexity. It's harder to test and validate. It's harder to isolate for end user and customer feedback. Smaller sprints of code allow us to look at things a lot easier. And this is where you're seeing this DevOps integrated with Agile ITSM as a real way to flow work out, get the benefit as quickly, because planning and building and testing does not provide business value. It only provides business value when you're able to actualize and utilize that technology. So it's imperative that we understand the results that we have. Because if we keep pushing all these changes out in big change processes, the level of testing, it slows us down. It's not effectively operating the environment. It's not allowing us to continually improve. If we're not continuously releasing, then we're not continually improving. At the same time, if we're not continually improving, then we're just continually stinking, right? Because we're releasing everything that's really bad. And we don't want that either, right? So it just is this process of isolating out the rollback, isolating out the feedback, but you can't do that in these larger changes, and that's where you're seeing the breakdown of complexity of release and change into these processes. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing this world where we want to improve our capabilities. Again, I'm going to cautiously use the word maturity here, but I like the word attainment better. I stole that from my colleague, Patricia Adams, who's 20 years at Gartner. She's fantastic. But she talks about attainment being the ability for you to show your capability. And if you look at that, really what ITSM wants to do is, we know this inherently, but we have a struggle getting here, is that we know that when we become more shared and are more collaborative, our quality of service goes up and our costs significantly go down. But typically we stay stuck in this world of between our initial implementation of ITSM to kind of more managed, where we have some planning, some change, some configuration related to it. But the real issue and why this isn't moving faster is because of the way that everything is all connected, right? We see that changes really come from a request for new functionality, or a request to repair an incident, or a request for a new asset. So if we look at these kind of processes we've spent a lot of time creating in Visio and building Word docs about, what are they doing for us? Well, aren't they really just flow of work? And can't we really isolate that if we don't have digital flow here, it's going to not scale? If there's a lot of physical limitations, such as meetings or emails, or if you manage things in spreadsheets, yes, I know email and spreadsheets are digital, but they're still kind of antiquated technology, that we're not really going to move as fast as we need to. And that's going to slow us down. And the more we have to untangle the knots, the slower that we can fish, right? So we have to find ways to flow faster. So what's this look like? And I apologize for the crudeness of this slide. I'm not the overly creative type, but I think you'll appreciate it. And I call this my waterfall methodology. That we have all these different processes, like requirements and building and testing and releasing and operating and incident resolving. And what it does is it helps us answer a lot of questions. And there's domain expertise inside of these processes. Like a really good requirements gatherer is a certain skill level and someone who can really do great job in testing. That's a great skill. So it's wonderful that we have teams and testing teams, requirements that work together. But do they share information and are they collaborative? Right? Where is their information typically sit? Does it not really sit in a bunch of different and disparate databases? Isn't it sitting usually in some kind of spreadsheets, or again, maybe it's an email, and it's in these different things that are really hard for us to find. We sometimes don't even know, right, where this data is sitting. Well, the breakdown here really leads us to one process. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, ITSM Academy doesn't provide extensive training on this process. You won't find this process in ITIL, but it's called the pray process, right? It's the process in which we say, oh, I pray to God they got the requirements right. Oh, I pray that someone tested this before they released it. Or please, God, someone have written a knowledge article. You may not have realized it, but you were actually doing the pray process at that point. So what does this really get us to? It gets us to this new world in which we've seen these organizations just be able to operate with such precision and such speed, the real agility that we're looking for. And when you dig deep into the teams, and you dig deep into their technology, and you dig deep into their methodology, what they've done is they've realized is we need the person who's testing this to thoroughly understand requirements. And boy, that person who built this absolutely needs to understand both. They not only understand what they need to build to, but they also need to understand what they need to build against, what will be the test requirements. In fact, some organizations like Netflix, a lot of times they are building the test requirement before they actually build the product. So when the product executes, they can automatically test it. Right? This speeds up the turnaround time and the feedback loop. How do they spin up the infrastructure? What does the infrastructure look like? Well, it's all software defined. And so the enterprise service model we traditionally work with, we're trying to collect assets and build relationship maps of the business services they support. That needs to happen in real time. Right? How things are connected and why they're being changed and what can break needs to happen in real-time capacity. And then on the operations side, it's the same thing. Like how we're resolving these things and what we fixed it. If our notes are fixed, we're not building data for chatbots and artificial intelligence that will be self-learning and self-managing systems. We need to provide detailed notes and push people to say, hey, listen, if someone asked a question that we didn't already have information on, we need to create that real time. So the next time that request comes in via email or through a messaging system, our chatbot or a messenger bot can automatically search and respond. Were you looking for this? No? Okay, great. Were you looking for this? Yes, that's what I was looking for. And we prove the information around it. System X is down. I can't log into this application. We don't need humans to do that. Those are physical limitations, but if humans have to create the knowledge, humans have to create the strategy, humans have to create the context and put it into a system. So the consolidation of these systems is really helping us to improve our agility. And that's why we have this dev environment and this ops environment, but working collaboratively off of what the health is and how we're sharing information, how we're creating these things. And what that does for us is it really helps improve our speed. It improves the resource demand that we have on IT so that we can improve the ability for our knowledge workers to think more creatively. We keep saying we want IT to be more proactive, but we're never going to get there if we continue to do heavy physical limitations, heavy physical processes. It takes meetings to review postmortems. It takes meetings to review if we can actually schedule this change in this date if there's a conflict. See, if we don't use digital strategies to look at a change request and see what else could be impacted by it, do auto notifications to the people who need to understand that this is changing or have tasks associated with it, have automated knowledge management built into the processes so that we can continue to build data repositories that could be queried in real time and share with us decision-making capabilities. We're not going to free up those resources to do the more proactive and real beneficial things. If we're spending so much time on service management, traditional stuff, we don't get to the real service management we need to, which is innovation management. We don't create demand processes. We don't create opportunity processes. We don't have an ideation process. We're not building out, ideation labs and experiential learning labs, and we're not creating new customer service labs and new end user labs where people can come and try new things and provide us feedback for validation on, does the market want this, and is this the right direction for our organization? And if project management and enterprise architecture go sitting in their White Castles and in their ivory towers and not heavily involved in some of these tactical operations, again, we're failing because there's a ton of information that they could be leveraging, we could leverage from them. Right? Enterprise architectures really have the ability for us to cut down on the reactive things that we respond to, such as ransomware and outages. So they need to get out of there creating Visio diagrams and really kind of get into creating real-time architectures, helping us to optimize the way change releases are done and optimizing the way problem management is done, and looking at vendor and supplier scorecards so they can pick new architecture frameworks that aren't the latest and greatest but actually have vendors who can support their SLAs and their response times. And then PM needs to be involved in the financial aspects of this, to know metering and capacity utilization to help us to look at the funding operations. So as we're building internal private clouds or we're leveraging external clouds, what's the real cost of ownership there? So they need to be integrated into these processes to help us. Right? And what this does is this helps us to transform from being a support organization to really being that person who can go out and drive innovation. Really go out there and show these are the areas that people want the most from our technology. This is the way people want to interact with our systems and with each other through digital technologies. This is the health and sustainability of our digital platforms. So if you're not able to have those conversations today, you need to really step back and think about, well, where has our focus been? Are we learning about agile development? Are we learning about DevOps? Are we learning about Scrum? Do we understand what a real story is? Do we understand how we're consuming technology with our environment? And do we understand where the physical limitations are? Where is our ideation system where people can throw out, hey, it would be great if we could? So if you don't have that, then we're not going to be able to step into this new arena. Because the Chief Digital Officer is reporting for duty. She's going to be the person who's going to have the most budget. She's going to have the person who has the most critical team within the organization. She's going to have the strategy that's going to take the business to the next level. She's going to be the person who understands where the physical limitations are within the business execution and how digital transformation is going to remove those physical barriers and increase growth and revenue, increase customer experiences, increase profitability, increase scalability, increase your ability to go global in your offerings. Because she understands that it's not about operational controls, but it is about continually moving forward in your digital strategy. It's about taking your digital strategy to the next level. And that's really imperative for us, right? Because we are truly ITSM professionals. Our goal and mission should not be deploying processes. Our goal and mission should not be deploying technology. What's our mission? Continual improvement. Isolating the business services that we have, understanding the vital business functions that underpinning them, and removing any kind of constraints, whether they be availability, security, performance constraints that we have, and pushing that service to the next level, really optimizing that vital business function. That's what's going to take us to the next digital era. That's what's going to take us into preparing ourselves for digital business. That's what's going to secure ourselves a great career and future. It's going to make us part of a great team. It's really going to enable us to get there. And the really great thing about this is these are skills that we have. If you think about the digital officer, what are they looking for? Relationship and understanding. How to have better interactions with end users and provide feedback and customer support. How to analyze metrics and reporting to know where to spend, where to fix, where to invest. You've been doing that. So this is a great opportunity for us. That's why I really passionately believe that ITSM professionals, if we can learn more about Agile ITSM, increase our awareness about DevOps, if we can embrace an understanding of how businesses want to leverage technology and want to improve their services from a digital experience, we really can position ourselves to be that digital transformation leader. Karen, I'm available for any questions that have come in. Happy to have any further discussion that anybody would like to have at this time.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that presentation, Matt. I have a whole list of new terms that I have gleaned from this presentation.
Great.
And yes, I love it, and especially the prayer process. Love the prayer process. Right?
I've done a lot of time on that process.
I never thought about it, but I do that. We all do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept of the physical barriers and removing them was very enlightening for me as well. So I like that. We don't have any questions yet. People are just starting to send them in. So here they're going to send them in now. And while they're doing that, let's just, I just want to let people know if anybody needs to drop off early. For those of you that need to, I'd just like to remind you that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, November 17th, when Donna Knapp, the Curriculum Development Manager here at ITSM Academy, joins us. And Donna's presentation is titled Agile Service Management, where ITIL meets Agile. And this is going to play right into what Matt's been discussing with us today. And IT service management and ITIL processes must accommodate two speeds of IT, the traditional mode that must maintain checks and balances and focus on predictability, and then the agile DevOps mode that needs to move quickly with a focus on innovation and exploration. So one-size service management processes do not fit all. So please join us to learn how to adapt Agile and Scrum values and practices to IT service management and ITIL processes and process design and improvement activities in support of multi-speed IT. So we're looking forward to that one as well.
That sounds like a great presentation, Karen. You know, there was an article in 2003 by a gentleman named Nicholas Carr. He was a Harvard business professor, and he wrote in Harvard's Business Review, IT doesn't matter. It was a very controversial article, and you can look this up. And one of the things that he talked about in the article is that over time, things that become such a commodity, if you try to maintain them yourselves, it actually becomes a business risk. And he spoke about, this is back in 2003 when Amazon used to sell books. You probably forgot that Amazon used to sell books. But he said that there will be a day where people will buy IT services over the internet, and that IT will be a big risk to the business. That was the whole premise of his article. And if you look today, just how easy it is for you to go to Amazon and purchase networking and computing and memory, it really has come to fruition that, that commoditization. And as you were teeing up the next webinar that you're producing by Donna, it reminded me of like where we are sometimes with our processes, like our change advisory board meetings, for instance. They've become really commoditized in a lot of organizations. And I think in that aspect, they've also become a risk, because what we've stopped doing is we've stopped looking at all the changes that come into our change advisory boards and saying, why aren't these standard changes? Why aren't we automating some of these change and some of this risk analysis, or pushing this back to the functional owners? Right? And so that's just, a great way to, as you go back and you start looking at this multi-speed or multivariant modes of operation, we really do need to challenge the status quo that we've fallen into in a lot of organizations. Well, this is just the way we do it here, because we're seeing that this is people are just bypassing us. Again, this whole concept of business IT and business going out and acquiring their own IT services is really something that's going to be very challenging for most organizations. And while we think, well, that'll never happen here, it's happened in some of the highest levels of government and some of the most secure levels of Department of Defense, the biggest financial services organizations. Capital One, who I'll call them out because they have very open about this, they have embraced DevOps. They have, their CTO has a GitHub where he exposes some code that they write to manage their operation. He blogs about it frequently. So, if you think that your organization would never embrace these new multi-speeds or DevOps, you're wrong. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. So definitely, I'm looking forward to that presentation. I'll be there.
Oh, perfect. We'll be happy to have you. But you know, I mean, in your example with Uber versus the taxi, whoever thought that would happen,
That's right. That's
right?
right. And despite government regulatory pressure to stop it, you look at New York City. I mean, they really tried to squash Uber. The taxi drivers had such leverage. But then this unforeseen occurrences. Sandy came and hit, and when Sandy hit New York and took out the subway system and a lot of the bus stations because of the flooding, you depended on a taxi to get around. Well, there weren't enough taxis. So they fast-tracked the legislation for now Uber to operate, and then once they did that, no one was ever backing down. Oh my goodness, it's cheaper and a better experience for me to do it this way?
Mm-hmm.
Why would I ever go back to a taxi? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Just
Exactly.
because you think that you have a cornered market or that you're a captive service provider or that, that this is the way it is, things change. We just constantly cannot foresee the levels of complexity that our business might face. I'm sure the IT team at Blockbuster thought they were rock solid, providing world-class IT operations and support. I mean, they could have 5 nines availability and all the other check boxes that they needed to have. But if your business is in the wrong market, in the wrong market direction, that's going to affect you in IT.
Right. Well, and they were trying to make, Blockbuster was trying to have all of these stores around to make it easier for people to get them, as you mentioned, so that it was easier to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And now I notice in the supermarkets here, we have the machines for the DVDs in the supermarket now, and there's hardly ever anybody there taking one out of there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Redbox is struggling.
Mm-hmm.
There'll always be a niche market for some things, but even I'm sure others have tried the Amazon experience, and I'm a huge Amazon fan, don't get me wrong, but the Prime experience for watching a movie has been a challenge for me. I use Chrome and I use an iPad for Chromecast for my TV. I can't watch Amazon from my iPad to Chromecast to my TV. I can with Netflix. So 9 times out of 10, even when my kids are willing to pay for a movie, I don't pay for it. We'll just go back to Netflix because I don't feel like going upstairs and grabbing my laptop to have to watch a movie on my television.
Right. Right.
Maybe that's too much of a physical limitation for me because I'm getting too lazy. But
but you're right. It's you want it at your fingertips.
but,
You want it now. You want it when you want it. You don't want to have to. You take the path of least resistance is what you do, and that's natural, right?
That's absolutely right. And if you look at the support process, like one of the things we always say is you have to grab your configuration items or your assets and tie them back to support tickets. Mm-hmm. Sometimes us in the support world, we don't understand why we need to do that. But if you looked at Amazon and you ran the analytics of how many people have reported the issue of not being able to watch Amazon movies on an iPad, you'd see there's a substantial amount of requests against that. So if Amazon's going to, really go after this market, which I know they are, and they're going to make a decision to invest in their technology, which I know they are, well, where do you think they're going to look? They're going to look at investing it in the iPad, right? And make the iPad an easier experience for people to watch their movies. They know that if they don't do that, they're going to have this issue. But if they weren't logging that, if that wasn't part of the request process, when I put my ticket in, it didn't know that I was putting in my ticket from an iPad, it's not going to have the analytics. And
Right.
And that's the opportunity for us in ITSM is to leverage and harness analytics and intelligence and relationship within the systems that we're supporting to provide more direction for the business direction, right? Where should we invest? How should we invest? What are people using? And that's why I say if people don't know where to start with this, look at your self-service request catalog, right? If you want people to go into that request catalog and that's where you want them to search knowledge. You want them to do that instead of calling the service desk or emailing them. Run analytics. Find out your bounce rates. Understand these terminologies. Grab someone from marketing and help you do that because marketing is already using it and has pros in the Google Analytics space. Mm-hmm. You have to have those skills to demonstrate your ability to understand user experience and customer experience. It's number 2 in the CEO's agenda. Right. So if we're not strong on showing how we can support those CEO agendas, we're just going to be left out.
Right. That's right. Thank you for that. We have Eric. My colleague Eric Montijo is here with us today, and Eric would like to share some information with our listeners today, Matt. Eric, you there? Eric?
Eric's talking away on mute.
He is?
I actually have I'm sure, because we all love to do that, as you know. This is Lisa, as you know. And since I've had the ability to come off mute, I'm going to ask it. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit because you said something super powerful, and I really would like for you to repeat it. You said, as ITSM professionals, it's not our job to deploy processes. Do you remember that sentence, or did you make that one up on the fly?
I said that our focus should not be on deploying processes. Our focus on deploying technology. Yes.
Okay, our focus. I loved it. Say the whole thing for me again.
Yes, our focus should not be on deploying processes. Our focus should not be on deploying technology. Our focus should be on continually improving the business experience, the business outcome, the business drivers, whatever those are. And most of the time, those are removing physical limitations within the business.
I love it. And I will say that next month's webinar, this, I think, was a fantastic webinar. And, you know, I love talking about disruptive technology, and this is one of my geeky fun things, which is why we're such good friends. But next month's webinar, I think, takes this high level of discourse that you've kind of started in everyone's brains and is going to really give some tangible examples and steps for ITSM professionals, because we're seeing a lot of folks that are saying, we're ITSM, we're not Agile. Agile is development. And that's, you know, that's so not true. And I think, you know, people are not always thrilled with change. And so as ITIL or ITSM professionals, there's some sense of, you know, uncertainty, FUD, as you'd call it. So I think that this really probably helped a lot of people understand the need to move, to at least understand ITIL. And, you know, I know that you can apply the ITIL tools and practices to anything. I mean, I use it now. I use a Kanban board for my personal life. So do you know what I mean? But anyway, and Eric has a special offer for everyone to also help take the next step. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Eric.
Thanks, Lisa. And now that I can actually unmute myself, hey everybody, and Matt. Oh my God, thank you so much for coming today. This is an excellent webinar. I enjoyed every part of it.
Thanks, Eric.
It's so motivating to ITSM professionals to understand why we need to agile up our processes, and we want to help you take that step. We have a minimal viable ITSM workshop coming up on December 9th, and I want to offer that to everyone here as a free seat to that workshop. I want you to head over to our website. Go ahead and up at the top right, either search minimal viable or MVITSM. Either one will get you there. And then you're going to check out with the coupon code WebinarMV. And I'm going to put all this stuff in a chat. You're going to receive an email about it too. I just want you to register as soon as possible for that December 9th offering, just to kind of get your foot in the door. If you need help registering, please feel free to drop us a line here at info@itsmacademy.com. Again, that's info@itsmacademy.com. Thanks again, Matt. Back to you, Karen.
Thank you, Eric. And would you mind putting that in the chat for everybody as well, that code for them?
I'm about to type that right now.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. And we do have, and thank you for your question.
Through the link in, Eric, and everyone. So you can just click off of that link. It was such a powerful sentence, Matt. I really feel like it was transformative, but sorry for the pun.
And I have a question for you, and I believe this is coming from somebody that you know, Matt. It's from Andrea Kiss.
Andrea.
Yes, and Andrea said, do you think that our processes, like ITIL processes, are ready for the digital age?
The process isn't the problem. It's the application of the process that I think is the problem. And while there are some things that you just have to learn to let go, in last June when I was in London at CITS, I gave a presentation called Cutting the ITIL Boat Anchor. And what I highlighted in the presentation is that it's not about getting rid of ITIL. It's about getting rid of the anchors that are built into it. And those anchors back in the mid-2000s were vitally important for where we were as an IT community and where we were in the stage of just coming out of Y2K and just coming out of the .com and having now thrown in our face corporate compliance because of the issues with Enron and things like that. Those regulatory pressures and the issues we had between fraud and IT, sprawl and overspend, massive business issues that required IT to get more disciplined, to get spanked a little bit. And it was fine, and it was good. But we've now moved on. And what we're learning now is that things such as change management, how could you possibly do change management in this new world where your software-defined infrastructure can spin up a series of VLANs with hundreds of IPs, tons of operating systems, tons of applications infrastructure in literally microseconds, run 15,000 business transactions, and then go away in an hour when you meet once a week to do your change approvals. So obviously it's the application of it, right? Does ITIL say that every change has to go in front of a cab? Of course it doesn't. Do some people do that? Probably some, but they shouldn't. But the reality is even a change approval isn't something that will be sustainable in the future. What we need is change recording. The change needs to be recorded, and it needs to have enough metadata around it to do analysis, such as which teams make a lot of changes that break things and which teams release a lot of things that never break things. Because the ones that never break things, let them keep flowing fast. The ones that are breaking things, let's stop and have a conversation. Right? Let's pull that end-to-end cord and get everybody rallied around and figure out why they're breaking things. Are they not testing? Do they not have the requirements, right feedback loops? It's not about slowing it down. It's about finding ways to improve it, but also keep the quality up. Because if you have to redo things from start to finish, that's also slow. I don't care how fast you built the code and pushed it out. So it's not that ITIL processes per se, and I think the general terminologies of the processes will stick around, and calling incidents, and requests, and problems, and change, that's fine. We've all accepted, embraced that. Let's now take that to the next level. How do we do change logging and change analysis and risk-based changing from an artificial intelligence and data deterministic standpoint, and not in meetings, and not in email, and not on web conferences? That's where we need to get to, right? Taking those processes to the next level.
Thank you, Matt, for that. That's, you're right. Think about all of the time that's being spent. It doesn't necessarily need to be.
Well, and I think it's Lisa again. I think that so many people struggle with analytics, and with the tools, there's even in my world, there are so many places and ways to get analytics. So to be able to figure out the best, truest analytics and what is the most meaningful data, I think it's, for me anyway, it's kind of one of those tasks that's so overwhelming. I understand the importance of it, but it's not necessarily in my skill set. So I really like the suggestion that, particularly for the portal, that you work with someone on the marketing team that is an analytics expert, because the concepts and the theories are the same. And I know that it's like one of those just such a big project that I'm never quite sure where to start. So I thought that was also a great suggestion.
Yeah. And last year I wrote a blog called Create Your Damn IT Strategy, and DAM was DAM, which is a marketing acronym for Digital Asset Management. And in that, I actually said, go sit with the marketing team and understand how they're crafting their digital asset management strategy, what they do for digital assets, and then how they measure and report them. Because the way they measure email responsiveness versus web responsiveness, it's insightful to understand the business story they tell around analytics and the way they tell it, because what marketing's really good at is usually good storytellers. And so they don't just show, hey, we had 40% click rate on our email. They'll come back and say, Kath, well, based on the subject and the messaging and the where they clicked in the email, this is what we felt impassioned users to engage with us. And they tell a great story. And when you're financing marketing as a CEO, you say, that's a good return on my investment. Even if the marketing campaign was an utter failure, at least they've learned or they understand. In IT, we've almost never done that. We said, system availability was 99.8%. Well, why was it down 0.02% of the time? It's like, we told a really bad story. Instead of saying, despite 1,315 changes and the new executive agendas and the last-minute request from you, Sue, our CEO, we were still able to provide an incredible experience of availability to all of these people and blah, 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 and somewhere you drop in the and only 0.2% at this period of time, which only had negligible business impact. What a different story you're telling and how you're telling it and how you're presenting that data. And then she'll say, oh, that's amazing, Matt. You guys are doing a killer job. Let me double your budget.
Well, email me or send me the link to that, and we'll be sure to include that in the Q&A report that we put together. Because I do think it's kind of one of those things that's it's intimidating. And when things are intimidating, it often becomes the last thing on the list, and all of us have overflow days as it is, but how critical it is and the difference understanding that data can make in today and tomorrow's tomorrow is, well, I'm preaching to the choir now, so.
Those are all the questions that I have right now. So just general to the audience, if you have another question for Matt, if you could chat it in for us right now, that would be great. Be happy to share that with him and have him answer your questions. And I wanted to speak to you as well, audience, today. We do continue to bring you practitioner presentations and experiences discussing Agile and IT service management experiences and challenges. And people want to hear that from the practitioner, what it's like. So if you would like to share your implementation experience or your challenges and have a presentation with us, we'd be happy to share that and help you do that. So just let us know. Just reach out to us and let us know, and we will put you on the agenda for that.
And we really mean help you do that. If you have an idea and it's not really something that you've ever done before, we really can walk you through getting together the presentation if you need assistance with that. We can do it kind of as a Q&A if that's less stressful for you. But you guys all want to hear practitioner stories, but then so many practitioners just aren't really comfortable doing that. But we'll be glad to mentor anyone through that and help you make a successful webinar, which then you could submit for conferences. And there's a lot of conferences that if you get picked up as a speaker, they pick up part of your travel, all of your pass to the to the show itself. So it's just a great thing for every pro to have in their bag of tricks is one sort of great canned presentation, and we're here to help. So if you want to do it, just reach out and we'll assign you to one of our content team and we'll make that magic happen for you. And Matt, you're coming back in like March or April to do that idle anchor, just so you know.
Absolutely. And I like that, Lisa, too, if they, for the practitioners, if we say if you want to tell us about something, that's great. If you have challenges and you want to come in and do a presentation on the challenges that you're having, we have a wealth of IT service management people that attend these monthly webinars, and they'd be happy to give you some input and their feedback and their experiences as part of the presentation. You'll get that in the Q&A. So that would be great to do it that way as well. So just a thought for all of you. Oh, and Andrea came back and she said, haha, I wonder which conference that does that. I have spoken at 19 conferences and only 2 paid for speakers.
Really? Girl, we got to talk about the conferences you're going to.
Yes. Andrew, you should
We
give
follow
Lisa a
each other
phone call.
on Twitter. Just DM me.
Right? Yep. Get in touch with Lisa, Andrea. She will help you with that. All right. That's our questions for today. So once again, I just wanted to remind everybody that the next webinar is on Thursday, November 17th, when Donna Knapp joins us, our Curriculum Development Manager, and her presentation is titled Agile Service Management, and it's where IDLE meets Agile. And I think you'll find that very interesting, and it, as I said, it just, flows right along with Matt's presentation as well. And we'll send you all an invitation for the next webinar and look forward to having you join us. And as you log out, please take a minute to complete the post-webinar survey. It's just 2 questions, and it gives you the opportunity to request any webinar topics that you'd like to see us present in the future. Your feedback is really important to us as part of our continual service improvement process. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Matt, for coming and presenting for us today.
My pleasure, Karen. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. I gave you lots of stuff to retweet.
You act like I already haven't.
And please don't forget to send us the damn blog, because I really do want to include that. I think that will be very helpful.
My pleasure.
And I want to
thanks, guys.
And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.